There is a journalist who asked to speak with me last spring. She drove 4 hours from Winnipeg. She had a recorder and a notepad and good boots for the mud. She sat at my kitchen table and asked me what I thought the secret was. To still being here, she meant, at 96. I told her I didn't know about secrets. She wrote that down. Then she asked me to describe my morning, just the morning, what I do when I wake up. I talked for 11 minutes. She stopped writing somewhere around minute 3. By minute 7, she had put her pen flat on the table. When I finished, she looked at me and said, and I am fairly certain I am remembering this correctly. She said, "That's it? That's all you do?" I told her yes. She drove 4 hours back to Winnipeg with 11 minutes of notes. I don't know what she expected. I'm not sure she knew either. I am writing this to you, the version of you that is somewhere between 25 and 45, which is where I was when I still thought mornings were something to get through. You were born in a time when the morning is the first problem. The phone is already on. The day is already asking. You have not yet opened your eyes, and something is already waiting. I want to tell you something about mornings, not what they should be, what they actually are, if you let them be that. Let me start with what I did this morning. I woke at 5:17. I know this because I looked at the clock on the nightstand, a cheap digital one, red numbers, the kind that costs less than a decent meal. I have used some version of this clock for 34 years. Not the same clock, the same kind. I lay there for 3 minutes, not thinking, just noticing that I was awake. This is the first thing I do. I notice that I woke up. I do not say this dramatically. Some mornings it surprises me a little. I am 96 years old. The fact of continuing is not something I take for granted, but I do not perform gratitude about it either. I just notice it, the way you notice that it is raining. Then I got up, put my feet on the floor, sat on the edge of the bed for approximately 2 minutes. I can explain what those 2 minutes are, but not quickly. Bear with me. I drove a mail route for 38 years, 19 in England, 19 in Canada. Same kind of work, different roads. The thing about a long rural route is that nothing ever changes, and everything is different every single day. The same farmhouse at mile 12, the same gravel corner at mile 31, the same patch of birch trees near the end of the run that went white in October in a way that still puzzles me. The route didn't change, but the light changed. The temperature changed. A dog would be there one year and not the next. A mailbox would rust and get replaced. A family would move. New names on new boxes. I drove that route so many times that I stopped needing to think about it. And when I stopped needing to think about it, I started actually seeing it. That is the whole lesson. Everything else I am going to tell you about my morning is just that lesson wearing different clothes. The 2 minutes on the edge of the bed. I am not praying. I am not meditating. I have read about meditation and it sounds like what I do, but I did not learn it from anywhere. I learned it from the root. What I am doing is this. I am waiting for myself to arrive. When you wake up, there is a version of you that wakes up first. That version is already thinking about what it has to do. It is in the future. It has left the room before you have stood up. I used to be that person. For about 30 years, I was that person, awake and already gone. At some point, I cannot tell you the exact year, somewhere in my mid-60s, not long after Margaret died, I noticed that I had been leaving before I arrived for my entire adult life. I sat on the edge of the bed and I waited, for myself, until the part of me that was already in the future came back and sat down in my body where it belonged. 2 minutes, sometimes 3, once on a bad morning about 9. Then I go to the kitchen, the kettle. This is important, and I am aware it will not sound important. I fill the kettle with enough water for 1 cup, not 2, not 3, 1. I have done this every morning for a very long time. I do not do this to save electricity or water. I do it because making exactly what you need is a different act than making more than you need. It sounds the same from the outside. It is not the same. My second wife, Doreen, used to fill the kettle to the top every morning. 2 cups worth of water, whether she wanted 2 cups or not. I asked her once why. She looked at me like I had asked why she breathed. In case, she said. I thought about that word for 3 years. In case. I spent a good portion of my life operating on in case. In case I need more. In case things get worse. In case I want something later that I don't want now. I drove my route each day with a kind of half attention because I was always saving some of myself in case I needed it later. You do this too. I'm not guessing. Some of you are doing it right now, reading this, while part of you is somewhere else entirely. The kettle fills for 1 cup. I wait for it to boil. I do not do anything else while I wait. I look out the window. The window faces east. There is a field, a neighbor's fence, a row of spruce trees that have grown in the 22 years I have lived in this house and will go on growing after I am finished. Every morning the light is the same direction and a different thing. I do not have words for most of what happens in that window at 5:30 in the morning. The journalist asked me to describe it, and I told her, gray goes to blue, goes to something that isn't quite yellow. She wrote that down, then crossed it out. I have been watching that window for 22 years, and I still cannot tell you exactly what happens in it. That is not a failure. That is what it is. Some things do not get less strange the more you see them. I notice my left hand on the counter, the slight movement in it, that small private shake that arrived at 89 and has not left. I set the cup carefully because of it. Then I carry it to the table and sit down. I drink the tea. I do not read. I do not turn on the radio. I have a television, and it stays off until at least 9. This is not a discipline. I want you to understand that. I am not exercising willpower. The silence is not something I work at. It is just what's there if you don't fill it with something. I am going to tell you what took me until I was approximately 67 years old to discover, and I apologize for how plain it sounds. The morning is the only time of day that belongs to no one. The afternoon belongs to what you've already done. The evening belongs to what you're undoing. The night belongs to your body, which has its own work. But the morning, before the phone and the list and the version of you that is already in the future, the morning belongs entirely to whatever you actually are. I wasted that for a long time. Not maliciously. I just didn't know it was there. It's like that stretch of birch trees on mile 62 of my route. I drove past it for 11 years before I actually looked at it. Then one October morning the light was different, and I looked and I thought, has that always been there? It had always been there. You have been driving past your mornings. After the tea I go outside. This takes about 4 minutes of preparation. Jacket, boots, rubber ones, easier on the knees, and the back door, which sticks in cold weather and is stuck since 2014 when the frame shifted and I decided it wasn't worth fixing. I walked to the vegetable patch. Even in winter, I walked to the vegetable patch. In winter, there is nothing there. I walked to where it is anyway. This also puzzled the journalist. She asked why I go out when there is nothing to see. There is always something to see. That is not a philosophical statement. I mean literally, there is always something to see. This morning, there was frost on the wire of the old fence that runs along the east side. Not on the posts, only on the wire. I do not know why this happens. I have seen it before. I still don't know why. I find that satisfying in a way I could not fully explain to you. I stand there for somewhere between 3 minutes and 8 minutes. I have never timed it. I come back in when I'm done. That is the morning. That is what I do every single morning without exception. I am speaking to you directly now, outside the letter for a moment. I know what you expected. You expected supplements and cold water and a gratitude list and some kind of optimized sequence. I am not dismissing those things. I don't know if they work. I only know what I have actually done. What I have done is, I have arrived at the beginning of every day. Not successfully, not always fully. On the worst mornings I was only partly there. The morning after Margaret died, I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, and I cannot tell you honestly whether I arrived or not. But I sat there. The kettle boiled. I carried the cup carefully because of my left hand. I went outside. The field was there. The field was always there. Here is the thing about a routine. Most people think the point of a routine is the routine, that the sequence is what matters. I don't think that is right. The point of doing the same things every morning is that you begin to notice when something is different. Not because you're looking for difference, because the sameness is the background and the difference appears against it. The way frost only appears on the wire and not the posts, and you only notice because you've looked at that fence 300 mornings before. This is not efficiency. This is not optimization. This is just paying attention to what is actually happening rather than what you need it to be. I am 96. I have outlived one wife and most of the people I drove my route with. I have outlived a version of myself that I don't miss. The version I don't miss was always getting ready for the important part, always carrying a full kettle, always saving some attention for later in case it was needed somewhere more significant than here. Here is what I want to tell you, and I am going back to the letter now because it is easier this way. Dear you, at whatever age you are reading this, the morning you are about to have is not a rehearsal. You know this. You know it. But the knowing it and the doing something with the knowing are different things, and I took until my mid-60s to close that gap, even partially. You don't have to overhaul anything. You don't have to wake up at 5:17. You don't have to have a vegetable patch, or a window facing east, or a kettle you fill to the single cup mark. You just have to stop leaving before you arrive. Sit on the edge of the bed. Wait for yourself. The rest of it, the tea, the window, the frost on the wire, that came from the waiting, not from a plan. I set my cup down carefully on the table this morning. The tremor in my left hand, same as always. The cup went back exactly where I'd picked it up from. The light in the window had moved about 6 inches since I'd sat down. I noticed that. That is all I did. That and 96 years of doing it. The journalist called me 3 weeks after her visit. She said she had been sitting on the edge of her bed in the morning. She said it felt strange. I told her strange usually means true. She laughed. I think she had expected something more. There is nothing more. Do one thing, not for the whole day, not for the rest of your life. Do it for the morning. The morning is enough.